بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. The concept of substance in Descartes is a very important one, and it had a huge impact on the history of philosophy afterwards. Among the philosophers who was in a sense a follower of Descartes, Spinoza was, as far as I know, the one who actually took Descartes' definition of substance very seriously and draw logical conclusions from it, which were consistent with the definitions, with Descartes' definition and its implication. And obviously, Spinoza's concept of substance had a huge influence on Hegel afterwards. So, I think, anyway, let's read this entry on. So, a substance was defined by Aristotle as that which is neither said of a subject, and by subject we have in the subject of a sentence, nor in a subject. Example, an individual man or horse. That's from categories. In Arabic you call maqulat, al-maqulat, al-ashr. So the contrast here is between things which exist independently, such as an individual horse, and properties or attributes, such as being fleet-footed, which can only be predicated of or belong to a subject, but cannot exist independently. So substance is something, one of the characteristics of a substance is that it can exist independently. So for example, a chair exists independently. Obviously, it's always relative or on its own. So in that sense, chair is a substance. But color of the chair, you don't think of color as existing on its own. Color is always color of a something. So color is not a subject. It is an attribute and one of the signs, according to Aristotle, of something being substance is that it can be a subject in a proposition, and what is predicate or what is attribute or characteristics can only be predicated of a subject in a proposition. So attributes can only be predicates of a subject. So you can say the color, the chair is red, for example. So red is a predicate and chair is a subject. So in that example, a man is a subject, yeah, but his hands are not subjects because the hand can't exist on its own. A horse is a subject, but horse feet are not subject. They are predicate, they are attributes. So this is a conceptual distinction which Aristotle made, and then you apply those conceptual distinction on your ontology as well. So it's a conceptual distinction, and it's a grammatical distinction, and it's an ontological distinction. And what is the relationship? That's a huge topic in ancient, medieval, and modern philosophy. Okie dokie. Okay, taking up this example, For this notion of independent existence, Descartes makes the point that only God can be said to be utterly independent, totally independent of any other thing whatsoever. And so only God qualifies as the substance in this strict sense. Obviously, that's according to his Catholic Christian teaching, not according to Aristotle's teaching. Other things, however, are allowed by Descartes to qualify as substance only in the secondary sense, that they are independent of everything apart from God. Or as he puts it, they require only concurrence of God in order to exist. Linguistically, substance comes to English and I guess we are French through from Latin, and its Latin origin is substare. And from substare you get substrat, substant, which means standing firm. But the meaning of independence come here, and from substant you get Latin substantia, which means being, in essence. But the meaning of independence, or standing on its standing firm, is important here, and from there it comes to Middle English and all that. And in Middle English, substance mean something, essence or essential nature of something. Of being, in essence. But standing firm is important because that gives the meaning of independence in there. Advancing his celebrated dualistic theory of substance. So first he says that real substance is God, but then after that he goes to secondary conception of substance, and that actually is what plays part in his philosophy. And dualistic theory of substance mean, dual too. So for Descartes, there are two substances basically. One is matter, the other is mind. Descartes lays it down that to each substance there belongs one principle, to one principal attributes, which makes it what it is. In the case of mind, this is thought. So the essence of mind. So there are two substances, matter and mind, primarily, after God, obviously. And in the case of body, it is extension, body or whatever. So there are these two substances. So this is a dualistic theory of substance. And what makes something mind is thought, and what makes something body is extension. So they are either bodies or minds. There's no third thing. Obviously, there's a God. I don't know what he thought of God, whether it was body or mind or combination of both. But he doesn't discuss God. God, it seems like an ornament, or just to get things, you know. So he uses God to just, put it in on the back burner once he has discussed that, and goes to the real problems afterwards. So a dualistic theory of substance is, so apart from God, in the universe there are either bodies or minds, because they can exist on their own. So I guess mind can exist on its own. Body can exist on its own. And in humans, somehow body and mind combined, so they have exclusive nature. So that's why it's a huge problem for Descartes to explain how body and mind interacts within humans. And it's a problem for whole Cartesian philosophy, because their essence are totally opposite in the sense that they can't combine, they can't exist at the same time in the same thing. So the essence of body is extension. That's what makes it a body. And the extension of mind is, the essence of mind is thought. So these are two things in. So extension can exist independently. Okay. All the other features that can be predicated of minds and bodies are reducible to modes of one or the other of these attributes. Modes mean modification, in a sense. So mode is, linguistically, mode is manner of, way or manner. In which something occurs or is experienced or expressed or done. In Urdu we will say andaz. It is from Latin modus, which we have in modus operandi or operandi, which means measure. Okay, so modes are attributes. So you have either bodies and their attributes, or you have mind and its attributes. Thus, Descartes says we can easily have two clear and distinct notions or ideas. Clear and distinct is a technical term in Descartes, but if you can think of something clearly and distinctly, it means it is true. So we have two clear and distinct ideas of created thinking substance. You can have a created thinking substance, created because everything is created by God, at least, and for Descartes, and the other of corporeal substance. So you have thinking substance and you have corporeal substance. To this list is added the clear and distinct idea of uncreated and independent thinking substance, that is God. So we have a clear idea of God, we have clear and distinct idea of thinking substance, and we have clear created thinking substance, and we have clear and distinct idea of corporeal thinking substance. I don't know whether he thinks that that is created or this is like Aristotle, it has been there from eternity. I'm not sure. The terminology of substances seemed problematical to some later philosophers. Thus, John Locke wrote that we have no clear idea of at all, and therefore signify nothing by the word substance. So, in a sense, although John Locke is a critic of Descartes, but in my mind, he is also a follower of Descartes. So we have no clear idea of substance, so there is no substance in that sense, but only an uncertain supposition, or we know not what idea, which we take to be substratum or support of the ideas we do know. So, as we have seen in our other videos, for Locke, we don't have a clear idea of substance. Clear and distinct idea of substance, because as an empiricist, all ideas come from sense impression, and we don't have any sense impression of substance. What we experience is, in Descartes' language, only modes. So when I see a chair, I see color, I see extension, I see depth, and I can touch hardness, etc. So these are my experiences, and from these experiences I get idea, but I never get an idea of clear and distinct idea of substance. What I do get is that these ideas which I am getting can't exist attached to this thing, or I call chair, without there being something more substantial which stand firms. So rather than experiencing substance, what I do is I infer. I say there must be a substance, but since I don't experience it, I don't have any idea of, let alone a clear and distinct idea of substance. So I can infer with the help of my reason, based on my experience, that there is a substance, but I don't know its nature. Okay, so that was Descartes. And Descartes came to this, Locke. Locke came to this conclusion because, as an empiricist, he denies reason's capability to intuit, to see. So, unlike Descartes, he denies intellectual intuition. Our intuitions are all sensory, sense experience. And since they are sensory, we can't have any idea of substance, because substance is beyond our sense impressions. But because Descartes is believed in intellectual intuition, he said that we have a clear and distinct idea of a thinking substance and corporeal substance. Okay. So, yeah. So, but Descartes make it clear that the term substance doesn't refer to mysterious substrate hovering beneath the attributes of mind and body, as it is in Locke, because for Locke we can't have any experience. The distinction between substance and attribute, he writes in Principle Part 163, is a purely conceptual one. Thought and expression can be regarded as constituting the measure measures of intelligent substance and corporeal substance. And then they must be considered as nothing else but thinking substance itself and extended substance itself. We have some difficulty in abstracting the notion of substance from the notion of thought and extension, since the distinction between these notions and the notion of substance itself is merely a conceptual distinction. So thought and extension can be regarded as constituting the nature or the essence of intelligent substance and corporeal substance. And then they must be considered as nothing else but thinking substance itself and extended substance itself. We have some difficulty in abstracting the notion of substance from the notion of thought and extension, since the distinction between these notions and the notion of substance itself is merely a conceptual distinction, because thought is what constitutes corporeal mind, and or intellectual substance, and extension is what constitutes bodies. It's not. I mean, it's not entirely clear. What he's saying here. We would have to go back to the actual text and look at the context. But from our point of view, I don't think this is that important. The distinction between substance and attribute arising from is purely conceptual one. That obviously doesn't mean that substance for him doesn't have ontological reality. It must mean something else. Anyway, it is interesting to note that the concept of substance does not have a great deal of work to do in Cartesian physics. The material universe, it is true, is described in terms of the classification of res extensa, which is extension or extended substance, but the operation of the laws of nature is unfolded purely by reference to mathematical covering laws, which describes the result of the interaction of moving particles of different size and shapes, which makes sense, because if things are extension, and mathematics basically the science of measurement and quantification, describe it. So Descartes' approach may thus be said to prefigure the modern conception of mathematical based science, in which traditional terminology of substance and attribute is almost redundant. In Descartes' metaphysics, by contrast, the traditional apparatus plays a more important role. Okay, I think that's enough. Subhanallah. اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك وصلى وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته برحمتك يا أرحم